All right, it started, and the session is being recorded.
So yeah, I'll get a move on that. That way that's done. Taken care of. That way we don't have to worry.
And I'll just let you know. I'll let him know.
Just let him know, hey, I'm gonna escalate it if you if it doesn't get a response.
Make sure no one's emailing me questions.
Like I sound like I sound right now. It's just where I'm at.
And I try to give him this one, but this one. Yeah, but I don't care, like,
Yeah.
that.
If you think you guys may want to put it in request here sometime soon, and we get maybe a printer request or something like that. Even that one is quite old. They might have a better review for you.
I think I'll do that, not now.
Yeah.
I'll be up there buying.
Oh, yeah, you don't want to get stuff. Yeah, I'll follow up. Hopefully we get it resolved, soon. Hopefully this week. I'll put an extra stuff on it. And I'll talk Brad and training, until tomorrow.
Just so you know, there's a lot of background noise. Jillian, is that it in the office? Yep.
Hi, Ray. How are you?
Hi, nice to see you. I'm good.
Nice to see you. Jillian, it looks like some people might be going on to the Teams invite.
Okay, let me try to solve that. I removed the Teams meeting, but I guess some people already had it open. Just okay, so Denise and Tara were just in the Teams meeting, but they are about to join us.
Denise has a hand up. I don't know how you deal with that.
Hey, Faf, will you unmute Denise?
I think I'm I'm not in presenter mode.
Yeah, so you should have received a link from LWDA California with a personalized link that allows you to unmute and mute yourself. If you're not able to find it, I can send it to you again really quick. All right, I just sent it to you. Link, you'll have the panelist privileges.
I see Tara Lynn Gray in the attendees as well. Has the link been resent to Tara Lynn Gray? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Did we lose Maria?
I don't know. Oh, there's Tara. Okay, great. So Maria just disappeared. We go ahead and get started.
Okay. Are you able to reach out to Maria and make sure she has the right link?
Yeah, I'll send her.
She was here briefly. All right, shall we get started? Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jessica Pitt, Assistant Deputy Secretary of Healthcare Workforce in the Labor and Workforce Development Agency, and I am the acting chairperson, hopefully for no more than about 10 minutes for the kickoff meeting of our AB 2849 panel, Promote Ownership by Workers for Economic Recovery Act. I'd like to welcome everyone. We're going to start out with our roll call. I'm going to ask staff to call on each of the panel members, and if you could introduce yourself and say your name and your affiliation, that would be great. And then I'll review the agenda real quickly, and we will move to approving the agenda. So Jillian, do you want to kick us off with a roll call?
All right, so we'll start Jessica Pitt.
Great. So again, hello everyone. Jessica Pitt, Assistant Deputy Secretary of Healthcare Workforce with the Labor and Workforce Development Agency. I'm very pleased to be here. Glad that we're finally convening and look forward to working with all of you over in the coming year.
Thank you. Denise.
Well, Denise Tugade with SEIU United Healthcare Workers, government relations advocate. And yes, really looking forward to starting this work off. Really appreciate it.
Cristiello?
Hi, Ray Crisatello. I'm the Assistant Director of Research at SEIU United Healthcare Workers West. I'm so happy to be here with you all.
Let's see, Tara, do you want to go next?
Sure, Tara Lynn Gray here, Director of California's Office of the Small Business Advocate. And we are supporting the 4.2 million small businesses across the state. And we like to say supporting small strengthens us all.
And Maria, welcome. Are you there and can you hear us?
Hi, yes, sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're doing a roll call and doing introductions. If you could just introduce yourself, please.
Great. Sorry that I'm in transition, but I'm Maria Salinas. I'm the president and CEO of the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce. I also served on the Future of Work Commission. Thank you.
Great. Well, once again, welcome everyone. So we have an ambitious agenda today. We're going to start off by selecting a chairperson. We're then going to get a Bagley Keene and ethics training. We're going to review the draft panel scope of work, then move on to reviewing the draft study scope of work. Then we're going to review a proposed study partner. Then we'll agree on a schedule, locations for our next meeting. We'll have an opportunity for panel members to request agenda items for future panel meetings. We'll have public comment at the end and then adjourn. So do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Do I have a second?
I have a second.
Okay, any discussion? We're good, all in favor? Aye. You can just raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Great. Any opposed? No. So I think we're good. Agenda has been approved. Thank you very much. So as I said, I am the interim acting chairperson, but our first item of business is to elect a chairperson who will help lead us through this next year of work together and preside over our panel meetings. We have very, very capable staff support. So the main role of the chairperson really will be to preside over our meetings. So I would like to open up to the group and see if anyone is willing and able to act as our chairperson.
Is it appropriate for me to ask a question?
Yes, please go ahead.
Can the chairperson use staff to support their chair responsibilities?
See, John or Jen, can you answer that question for us?
Yes, that's the answer. Answer is yes.
Tara, does that mean you are willing to step up into this role?
Sure.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you so much. You made that very easy. So all in favor of Tara Lynn Gray as the chairperson for the AB2849 study panel. Well, first, could I have a motion?
Maria, I'll move.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Wonderful, all in favor? Please say aye
Aye.
and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
And we have a new chairperson. It's my great pleasure to turn the meeting over to you,
Okay.
So we have the agenda and we have staff that are really going to take over all of the next agenda items. So do you have the agenda in front of you?
I do indeed.
Okay, excellent. So you can just introduce each agenda item and our staff members will then take over in terms of presenting.
Okay, so team, next up, we have the Bagley-Keene Open Meetings Act and Ethics Orientation.
Okay, I am John Cumming. I'm going to be doing this. Just to let everybody know, I thought somebody on this panel had a timing problem, and it is perfectly okay to move the agenda items around. Even though you've approved an agenda, you're not wed to the order that you approve things in. If you need to change things around because somebody is going to show up late or has to leave early, you can do that. Okay, this is not going to be a full in-depth training. We've given you Bagley-Keene guides from the Attorney General's office and a more recent one by the Department of Consumer Affairs, as well as the current text of the Act. I'm going to cover some guiding principles and the highlights that apply to this panel's work. We'll also talk a little bit about parliamentary procedure. For ethics, you either have or you will take an online ethics course provided by the Attorney General's office. You'll get some kind of a email notification with a link to go do that. That training takes about 2 hours to complete. They do a great job of covering all the basics for state officials. I'm just going to hit a couple of particulars that are important for a panel like this one. About myself, I'm an attorney, and though I never aspired to become a practicing attorney, I've been one for a very long time. I am currently working for the Labor and Workforce Development Agency as a retired annuitant, which means I retired from my regular state job some years ago, and then I've come back to work on a part-time fill-in basis. I was with the Department of Industrial Relations for 19 years. During much of that time, I was their ethics counsel, so I have a lot of familiarity with that subject. Also, my first retired annuitant gig was with the Department of Consumer Affairs, which is the umbrella agency for about 36 regulatory boards. And one of our jobs there was to make sure they complied with the open meeting requirements. And so I have some more recent experience with that. I don't have 30 minutes of material, and I hope to be able to take questions, but also leave some extra time for the important things, other important things in your agenda. So let's start with Bagley-Keene. A guiding principle of Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act are open government and giving the public a seat at the table. It means, in effect, that you treat the public as a sixth member, non-voting member of this panel. Bagley-Keene's the counterpart of the Brown Act that governs, local government. If you're familiar with the requirements of the Brown Act, then you know the essentials of Bagley-Keene. One of the key things under either law is that you have to have your panel discussions and debates and arrive at your decisions right here in front of everyone. You cannot discuss or work things out in private as you might on a private sector board or a committee, or as they might do in the legislature. You have to do it here in a notice meeting so the public can participate fully in the discussion and debate, even though the public doesn't have a vote. Next. So let's hit the highlights. Requires a noticed agenda. Anything the panel discusses has to be in the agenda, which goes out to you and the public, usually for the public through posting at least 10 days in advance of the meeting. If it's not on the agenda, you can't discuss or vote on it. I mean, broadly speaking in subject terms, the public has an opportunity to comment on every substantive item in the agenda. The chair will need to remember to offer that opportunity as you go through each item. If we notice that we have members of the public in this meeting, I think we'll alert you. And if you forget to do so, I or one of my colleagues will be here to remind you in case you inadvertently forget. You can bring up new things that you want to put on the agenda for a future meeting. The public can also bring up off-agenda items. There's a time allotted for that near the end of the meeting. But you can't discuss those items unless they end up on the agenda of a future meeting. The public can also suggest items for future meetings. You cannot have private discussions with other panel members during a meeting. That includes emailing or texting each other while this meeting is going on. You can't meet with other panel members about panel business outside of these meetings. That includes doing it through an intermediary to communicate something to other panel members. I know that might possibly, there's two of you here from the same organization. It might be a bit of a challenge. I mean, you can talk about other things, and the two of you alone are not a quorum. So it's when you get to a quorum level, you really have problems with illegal conduct. One of the cardinal sin violations of Bagley-Keene or the Brown Act is what's known as a serial meeting, where panel member A contacts panel member B to discuss an item of panel business. And then one of them or an intermediary contacts panel member C to take their temperature on the issue. That's a serial meeting that prevents the public from hearing and participating in that discussion. This doesn't mean you have to stay completely isolated from each other. There's exceptions for things like social gatherings, as noted in your guides, but you have to be careful how you conduct yourself in those settings. Next, Bagley-Keene does allow for closed sessions for things like personnel and pending litigation. There's particular rules governing that. I'll note, however, this panel doesn't have any personnel of its own, meaning people that you have the power to hire and fire. And we certainly hope that there will be no litigation over how you conduct your meeting or the specific work you're undertaking. However, should the needs arise, there's special rules to follow, and council will help guide you through those. Now, about the setting of this meeting. Currently, we're all participating in I think a webinar, which is permitted under a temporary law that it was adopted as one of the COVID protocols. However, that law expires at the end of the month, at which point we go back to the permanent rules. Under those rules, there must be a physical location for panel meetings that is fully accessible to the public. Those meetings are likely to be in Sacramento, where the staff and some of your members are. It is still possible for one or more panels members to participate by teleconference from a remote location, but that location or locations must be publicized and also fully accessible to the public and must appear in the meeting notice. So it's far preferable to have everyone in one place at a meeting. And by the way, it doesn't mean that the public has to be at that location. They'll still have the option to participate remotely by joining Zoom or a webcast from private locations. Okay, let's say a little bit about parliamentary procedure and then move on to a couple of things about ethics. First, you're not required to follow any particular form of parliamentary procedure. Many boards use Robert's Rules of Order as a guideline, and that's fine, but I don't recommend adopting it formally, as there's a lot of arcane stuff in there that a lot of people don't know. This panel is small enough that you can do things by consensus. In other words, you can agree on a procedure for a given item, as long as that procedure gives voice to everyone present, including the public. If you want or need to vote on something, someone should propose a formal motion or another member seconding. That's so there will be a clear record of what you're voting on. This will go into the meeting minutes and then become part of the public record of this panel's work. I also recommend, because of the panel size, that every vote be by roll call. I know we did a couple of kind of voice votes, but I recommend roll call. Again, that's to make it clear to the public and to you when you're looking back what action was taken or not taken. Minutes will be kept, they are being kept by staff and will be, and then you approve those minutes. The panel approves it at the next meeting. Finally, ethics. Since the work of this panel is to conduct a study on creating an association of cooperative labor contractors, you may wonder, why do you have to file a Form 700 conflict of interest statement and take ethics training for state officials. And the reason for that is that you will be making governmental decisions. In particular, you will be awarding a contract to conduct the study. Staff is bringing you a recommendation, but you're not required to follow that recommendation. That's your decision. Regarding the Form 700, it might be new to the three of you coming from outside state government. I or one of my colleagues can help you work through any questions you have on how to fill out the form. Most of us here at LWDA have to do them. I will also remind you that your Form 700 is a public document and anyone can ask to see it. You know, one of the things they tell you is that don't put your, home address on these things, put your work address. Again, I'm not going to replicate the other things in the online training that you have or will be taking. I just want to highlight a couple of things about conflicts of interest. There's a lot of laws on conflicts of interest. They all center on the basic principle that you all understand of having divided loyalties. If you look at an issue in terms of how it will directly benefit or harm you, a spouse, or a close friend, rather than how it will benefit or harm the interests of the state, then you probably have a conflict of interest. I know we got a couple of panel members from United Healthcare Workers and others from the Chamber of Commerce, and possibly you already have opinions about the subject this panel is looking into. I want to assure you that having those opinions does not mean you have a conflict of interest. One of the reasons you are here is because of your background and the perspectives you can bring to this panel. Now, this is probably not a concern, but the one thing you have to remember in deciding how to vote on something is that you do so from the perspective of what's best for the state rather than what may be best for your organization. The conflict of interest you do need to watch out for is having a financial interest, especially in the contract you are awarding. In particular, will you or your spouse or dependent derive financial benefit from the contract because one of you works for or owns stock in a company the panel plans to hire? For multi-member boards like this panel, a conflict, the rules are very strict, consequences are very harsh. A conflict as to one is a conflict as to all. And you cannot avoid that conflict by the person with a conflict abstaining or even by them resigning from the panel. Simply stated, the panel cannot do business with a company that employs one of you or your spouse or dependent, or that one of you or spouse or dependent has an ownership interest in. That's an extremely unlikely scenario, not an issue if you're contracting with another governmental entity, but I thought I should highlight it for you. That's all I have on ethics for now. If you have questions later on about anything related to government ethics, you can get in touch with me.
John, I have a
Yes,
quick
sure.
comment, sorry. So I believe that Tara Lynn's going to need to be sworn in, right, as our new chair. Is that correct? Because I know I was sworn in last week just to be able to be acting chair.
You just need to be sworn in as a panel member. There's not a specific requirement for that, legal requirement for that in the government code.
Okay,
so.
Great.
And if I may also, John, I have a question. So
Sure.
many of us, I'm sure, file a Form 700 already. Will we have to do an additional, form taking office or joining the panel officially and then an annual, and will it be a separate from the one we already do for our agency? Do we know how that'll work?
So the situation for you and for Jessica is that you are ex officio members. You're actually exercising the delegated authority of, I think you're the office of the director of GoBiz is the designated member, and the secretary of LWDA was a designated member. You're exercising delegated authority, but when it's specifically put into the statute like that, it basically makes it another responsibility of the job you already have. So the answer is no. And you wouldn't be declaring anything different anyway, because Unfortunately, in a panel like this, you have to declare everything, and I'm sure you already have that responsibility. So
Okay,
it is an unusual thing. The others, since they are nominees rather than in here by virtue of another position they hold, that would include the person from the Future Work Commission. It's just a nominee from there. They do have this responsibility.
okay.
And if they're already doing it for another position, then it does mean another Form 700. Any other questions about that? It's a good question. Okay, I wanted just last thing about the Public Records Act. Work of this panel is public business. This includes communications about the panel's work, including panel-related texts or emails that you send or receive on your personal devices. Since some of you, or maybe all of you, will be using your own work addresses and devices to communicate, I recommend you find a way to segregate panel communications from everything else. That you can find any, panel communications to panel business. Don't mix it up with, other unrelated stuff that you may need to communicate to the other person, or unrelated topics. And you make a practice of deleting panel related texts and emails after 90 days. And that's all I have. That's me.
All right, well, thank you, John, for that very thorough recap of Begley Keene. Greatly appreciated. I think next up, we have the panel statement of work objectives. And I don't see names assigned to these since I see the next slide rather than the agenda. So forgive me for not introducing the person for each of these.
That's no problem. I'll be presenting the panel statement of work. So I sent it over to you guys and I'm happy to send it again, but hopefully you had a chance to review it. On these two slides that I have prepared, it's really just a couple highlights and overviews. I can make any changes that we feel necessary, no problem. So I'll just give a quick overview. The objective is to study the creation of an association of cooperative labor contractors and to facilitate the growth of democratically run high road cooperative labor contractors. AB 2849 requires the study to consider how to advance the goals of the Future of Work Commission within the association, incentivize the growth of the association and its members, promote tenets of democratic worker control, ensure that the association's members offer high road jobs. So we also have in the AB 2849 text that the study must include engagement with stakeholders that can assess opportunities and challenges associated with expanding workplace democracy. So these are part of the statement of work for the panel. And I just want to highlight that the panel will be making sure that the study covers these topics. Do we have any questions on this piece? Okay, I'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so our tasks for the panel that I've outlined based off of AB 2849, we have the budget and timeline. So the proposed budget of $800,000 is available on July 1st, a pending legislature approval. And the activities must be completed by June 30th, 2024. So the study has to be wrapped up by that date. The panel will participate in the following tasks: complete ethics and sexual harassment training, review panel materials as necessary in advance of the meetings, actively participate in meetings following agreed upon schedule, develop and approve the study scope of work, select and contract with a qualified study team, review study deliverable drafts, provide feedback, and monitor the study team performance to ensure study achieves objectives. And finally, to publish the final study report in accordance with AB 2849 requirements, which kind of brings us back to the top, which is by the date of June 30th, 2024. So these are the tasks I have outlined and included in our panel statement of work. Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have any comments? Because this is also what we're going to be approving. So if anyone has any changes, now would be the time.
It looks good.
Yeah, that looks good to me.
I would say it mirrors pretty closely the legislation. Would be happy to move to adopt the statement of work.
I'll second that.
So do we call for the vote?
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
We have a motion and a second. I'm sorry, I'm a little rusty here, guys.
I think Denise made the motion and I seconded.
Awesome. So should we call for the vote? All of the ayes?
And John, you were suggesting that we do roll call votes, is that right?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Ah.
And I would suggest even as you go through these items, you just go through each of the members since it's small and say, do you have anything to say? And some people might be shy. I don't know.
Okay, so call for discussion before the vote
Yes.
then?
Sure. Yes.
Okay, do we have any discussion, questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll move for the vote. Maria Salinas?
Aye.
Abby Snee?
I'm not a member.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Apologize. I'll get the hang of it here. Denise?
Aye.
And Jillian, your staff, right? Jennifer? Staff? Crisitiello?
Aye.
Thank you. Jessica?
Yep. Aye.
Okay.
And yourself.
Oh, yeah, I guess me. Aye.
Okay. I think I guess either Jillian can announce the vote.
It looks like it passed.
Okay. By 5-0, right? 5 ayes.
But 5 ayes, yes.
Okay. So moving to our next item, draft, let me go back to the agenda, right? Agenda. Okay, moving to the draft study, SOW and study partner background.
Great. Thank you. I'll jump in now. So Jennifer Sturdy, I'm Deputy Secretary for Evaluation with the Labor Agency. So let's jump into, I guess, the heart of this work. We thought we'd start with just a kind of overview of the timeline we faced to help explain kind of where we are with this. So the statute allows for a July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024 period of performance. The statute went into effect on January 1st, 2023, and as you all know, we went through the nomination process for panel members until May. We knew that to facilitate a July 1st contract start date with a study team, because of our contracting timelines, we would need to submit the study materials to the department to begin the contracting process by March 3rd. So there was a little bit of a lack of alignment with timelines if we wanted to hit the July 1st start date and have the full period of performance that we have according to statute. So labor agency staff developed a draft study scope of work from January to March 2023 based on the statute requirements and used that to begin discussions with potential study partners and identify a potential study partner. We did all this acknowledging that anything to move forward does require the panel's final approval. But what we wanted to do was our due diligence, develop a draft that this panel could review and set up the possibility for starting a July 1st start date. So we have started the contracting process with the proposed documents that I'll go over, understanding we require your approval. And so we have shared in the public materials the full study scope of work draft, and I'll go over that first. Of course, we kind of are taking this by step. First, we would need to know if the panel approves the scope of work as it's written. If so, and if there's no major modifications or rejection, then we can move to discussing the potential study partner. So I'll review the draft study scope of work with a few slides, but I know all of you are aware the full documentation is in your meeting packet. Next slide. So the draft study scope of work objectives are to answer questions related to understanding the benefits and sustainability of worker cooperatives to improve low-wage, low-skill worker outcomes. We believe that this would include examining the business conditions and enabling factors that may support a successful and sustainable business model for democratically run high-road worker cooperatives. I will note that in the statute, there is a reference to the development and establishment of an association. We saw that as one of potentially several options based on the literature and available evidence. So rather than have the study only center around one proposal, we wanted the study to center around examining that among other proposals. So we proposed 2 study phases. The first one is July 1st, if we can execute the contract and start in this time frame, to September 30th, 2024, mainly because we have a due date currently of June 30th for the final report of this study, and we gave a little cushion to close out the contract. Under that phase, we want to achieve the AB2849 objectives to produce a study to understand the benefits and sustainability of worker cooperatives. What we're proposing today is a contract that is well under and within our current proposed budget and is around $632,000. For phase 2, we incorporated into the scope of work the possibility of an applied research work stream, mainly because there's a question around what at the end of this first phase will be the recommendation in terms of an intervention or set of interventions or set of policies. And we thought if we built into the planning the potential to conduct applied research on the effectiveness of one or more of these selected interventions, we really have the possibility to learn not just from the study on what would be a proposed intervention, but use that to then inform building evidence on what intervention or policies are actually taken on as a result of the study. So we try to be really clear that there's no current funding, it's optional. It's just to build into the discussions with this panel how we might use the output of the primary report to inform next steps and then potentially build evidence around those next steps. So next slide. So for the phase 1, which is to achieve the objectives of 2849, we have in the July to September timeframe the design period. So the study partner will develop the study plan report for your review, discussion, and for community review and feedback. This will include final preparation and presentation of study methods, key questions, any necessary questionnaires, necessary ethical review for conducting interviews and engagement with human subjects, etc. The next phase would be the implementation phase from September to May 2024, where the study partner would then actually lead the study that you have approved to move forward with, including methods that are in the draft scope of work that we anticipate the study leveraging. So literature review, data collection, analysis, and then interpretation of the results. We anticipate, based on your schedule recommendation, presenting progress by the study partner in a monthly or quarterly set of presentations. And the proposal is to produce a final report that has 6 chapters. In the scope of work, we defined those 6 chapters to center around examine the effects of worker ownership on outcomes, and there's a set of core outcomes we want to be looking at. Examine standards for high road cooperatives. What would those standards be, whether you are establishing an association or elsewhere, other alternatives. Examine barriers to employee ownership and high road strategies. Examine enabling factors that promote cooperative success. Once you know what a good cooperative could look like, how do we make sure that it is sustainable, feasible? What are the enabling factors for business and industry to work with cooperative? Examine policies and interventions that California could implement to promote high road worker cooperatives. And the last section would be to present evidence gaps and a learning agenda to fill those gaps, which may inform the phase 2 we reflected on. Next slide. As presented in the draft scope of work, this is just a little more detail on the anticipated methods that can be further fleshed out in the study design report, but a literature review with some flagged leading reviewers, peer reviewers that are experts in this area. Expert interviews. So the interviews will certainly include representation from organized labor, employees at existing cooperatives, and the leadership and members of existing associations of worker cooperatives. And interviews and focus groups with employee owners and with employees of matched capitalist firms. The study will also hold 2 focus groups with each of the proposed 3 industries. I actually didn't flag that in the last slide, but we have a few highlighted industries, of course, up for discussion with this group and over the course of the study design phase, but flagging allied health, rural hospital management, and agriculture. In each industry, 1 focus group will have employee owners and 1 will have employees of capitalist firms of a similar size. The study partner will select the focal industries in cooperation with the panel. Next slide. And of course, this is just the placeholder for the applied research section of the scope of work, which is entirely dependent on whether the panel and/or legislature would propose to implement any policy or intervention as a result of the final report. And any applied research looking at building evidence on that policy or intervention would require funding and feasibility assessment. Next slide. So I'll stop there. I know you all have the full scope of work in front of you. I had a few guiding questions for the group, mainly, are the report chapters and kind of the at least initial scope of what we would anticipate looking for in the final report in alignment with your expectations, or do you have other comments? Do the study methods look relevant, feasible, appropriate? And do the set of deliverables align with your expectations of satisfying the requirements of AB 2849? And I'll pause here for the panel's review of the study scope of work.
So if I may ask a question, I am on page 12 of the materials where there's the draft study statement of work. And then I guess it's tasks and then study deliverables. I don't see the headings. I'm sure they're there, the ones that you just mentioned, but I'm not seeing them.
The headings for the chapter?
Yeah.
Okay, they're a little earlier.
They're earlier.
They're in the objectives section of the scope of work. So in the objectives section of the scope of work, we define what we would aim to achieve with the report. And so each of those chapters are defined in the objectives section, phase 1 report, understanding benefits and sustainability of worker cooperatives.
Okay, thank you. This may be a silly question, but I'm sorry, I have a lot of them. When we talk about worker cooperatives, are we only looking at those that are strictly defined as co-ops? Or are any other employee ownership models considered to be a cooperative?
I'm so glad you asked that. So when we met with several study partners, that question was asked, and we left within the scope of work some scope to be flexible there. So because there are other employee ownership models, let me see if off the top of my head I can find the language. We did include the ability to look at not just the strict definition of cooperative, but other employee ownership. I think if I'm looking at chapter 4, examine enabling factors that promote cooperative success. The study will examine what regulations, financial market conditions, labor market conditions, and institutions facilitate worker ownership in settings where employee ownership is more common. Okay, so looking elsewhere, I will just say I know it's there.
Okay.
I think it's actually chapter 3, examine barriers to employee ownership, where we're kind of looking into not just cooperative, but employee owners.
Right. And you have the traditional barriers there, transaction costs, legal barriers, et cetera. And those would apply to all of them, not just cooperatives.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, cool. We're voting to adopt this framework, right? Are we?
That's what we're hoping for today is to know if you approve or do not approve.
So I guess I would like to know if other panel members have questions. Do we feel that we're in a position as a panel to make a decision today?
Hi, this is Ray. This looks great to me. I read through before, and then this overview is helpful as well in terms of the chapters, the methods that are outlined, and then the deliverables too, and the flexibility on scope. Like I noticed too about the question you were just asking, that it includes democratically run ESOPs. Like there's a flexibility there that is comforting to me. So yeah, in terms of this, the chapters, the methods, the deliverables, this all totally looks to me like it fits within the charge of the language, and what we're supposed to be having the panel look at. So I feel comfortable with it.
And Tara, I can jump in here too. I really appreciate being walked through this. I'm looking at it fresh, but it looks like it's definitely, we've got the items that need to be addressed.
And I will just add that I'm very appreciative of the kind of contingency for further research as follow-up, and appreciate how that is really driven towards an actionable kind of next step in the research. So I'm really excited to see that.
Awesome.
And Jen, I just want to appreciate all the work that you and your team did to lay the foundation. This is really comprehensive and I think really encompasses what we would want to look at as a panel. Thank you very much.
May I ask, once the report is done, will we just have a report, or is there any plan for socialization of the report? Any type of letter presentation, any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's built in also for that cushion period as well. I think in the discussions and in the scope, we did include, presentations, hopefully engagement. I mean, I think, any study team is very appreciative of when they can make sure it's not just a study on a shelf and go out and kind of share the findings and see how to make it actionable. So yes, it's built in.
Awesome.
Can I ask a question about the 3 proposed sectors that we might focus on, and just any background that would be helpful for the panel to understand how those 3 were selected, understanding that we have the flexibility to look at other sectors if we so choose?
They came up in various consultations as just priority areas, especially for looking at the I guess option of worker cooperatives. I know agriculture and allied health were also priorities, for this year and next couple of years. I don't have much more detail than that. I'm not sure if any of my other colleagues who know some more of the history here would chime in with anything more than that. I think that they're also proposed, and they're proposed even in the scope of work. So over the next few months of the design stage is when this panel would determine what sectors you want to focus on.
Do we have any more questions from panel members for Jennifer? All right, hearing none. Do we have a motion to adopt the SOW for the draft study as designed in our package?
I move to adopt the draft study scope of work.
Maria, a second.
Thank you, Jessica and Maria. Let's call for the vote. Roll call, Maria.
Aye.
Yeah, you want to offer an opportunity for discussion? I don't know that anybody has any more, but once the motion's made, just to let you know.
Sorry.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have any more discussion on this item before we take a vote? Okay. Thank you, John. Hearing none. Maria, let me hit you one more time in proper order.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. And Denise?
Aye.
Awesome. And did you say Ray or Ra?
Ray.
Ray. Okay, Ray, I'm going to get it right.
Aye, thank you.
Okay. And Jessica?
Aye.
And Tara? Aye. Jillian, does it look like we our motion passed?
5 ayes and 0 nays.
Okay. Next up on our agenda is draft study partner, Institute for Business and Social Impact.
And I'll jump in again if that's all right. So again, going back to our sequence of hopefully not getting too far ahead of ourselves, but needing to get some documentation submitted and decisions at least initiated, if we wanted to hit that July 1st timeframe. We, with our draft scope of work, started conversations with potential study partners. I was a part of a few, others here were a part of others. We reached out to multiple, well-known resources: UCLA Labor Center, UC Berkeley Labor Center, Berkeley Center for Law and Work, and the Institute of Business and Social Impact out of Berkeley. Some were not available for the work or didn't align with current workloads. But with the focus on examining the business conditions and enabling factors that may support a successful and sustainable business model, we wanted to focus on a study team with qualifications on examining both worker and industry needs. And so we focused in on the Institute for Business and Social Impact. Many of these consultations were with groups that we have worked with in the past. I've worked with a faculty director here years and years and years ago, which is how I thought to kind of reach out and engage with this group. IBSI, I think they go by IBSI, builds on historic commitment of the University of California, Berkeley's Haas School of Business to focus on excellence in research and public education. IBSI focuses on the design and testing of innovative, impactful, and evidence-based solutions to social and environmental challenges. The goals of IBSI are to build a more equitable, inclusive, and sustainable society, train leaders who can work across traditional boundaries between nonprofit organizations, for-profit enterprise, and the public sector to achieve social impact, and promote social entrepreneurs to create new solutions to societal and environmental challenges. Next slide. We shared the scope of work with IBSI, and a professor within this institute was very interested in kind of further discussion with us. David Levine is a professor of business administration at Berkeley Haas, where he chairs the Economic Analysis and Policy Group. He's a past chair of the university's Center for Health Research Board for the Center of Responsible Business, and on the advisory board for SIGA, and served as associate director of the Institute of Industrial Relations, which is now known as the Berkeley Labor Center. He's published articles on compensation, workplace diversity, and employee involvement in refereed journals throughout several journals. Dr. Levine has taught at the Haas School since receiving his PhD in economics, and has held visiting positions at MIT, Department of Labor, and the President's Council of Economic Advisors. He's written about and certainly examined, I think, very related topics around workers' compensation and new employment contracts, going back actually, quite a ways into the 90s and early aughts. I've looked up, multiple of these references, and there really seemed to be an alignment with his past experience, expertise, and research kind of leadership. He worked with us to develop a draft budget, and this is our proposal for this group as the study partner. Contracting with IBSI, led by David Levine as the principal investigator. And in that budget, there's at least budget for one graduate student researcher to support the work. I know it may be a lot for the group to take in, but we felt that this was a very strong potential partner for this work, given expertise. Yes, John?
So I wanted to just note for the panel about the contracting process, and what staff has proposed is an interagency agreement, which you can do with one of the types of public university institutions that they were considering. You could go through the regular contracting process. That would require a bidding process, and that would eat up the next 6 months of your work. And so why, you've heard about the time constraints, and that's why staff thought this is the way to do it. And then they're giving you their recommendation on which of those kinds of agencies to go with.
Thank you, John. Do we have any questions for Jennifer about the proposed partner? As it relates to maybe the scope of work and what the partner will be doing? Anything from panel members?
Oh, this is Ray. I was just going to ask that the team actually working on it. I just want to make sure I have it right. It's David, who you've described, who sounds great, and then a grad student. Are there others identified on the team?
So that is probably something I can also share. I wasn't sure actually everything that I could share based on kind of decisions to make, but yes, the team and the budget is pretty clear with who's on the team. So David Levine is the principal investigator. He would lead this. A graduate student researcher would be hired, but of course that person can't be identified until there is a contract in place. And then a representative from the institute itself would support kind of coordination, project management, participating in meetings, making sure, things run smoothly from the studies in terms of a project management perspective.
Great question. Any other questions from panel members? And I did see a note from Maria Salinas that she had a previously scheduled appointment, and I believe she is dropping off shortly. So if there are no more questions regarding Jennifer's presentation on the proposed study partner, is there a motion to adopt Jennifer's recommendation for the draft study partner, Professor David Levine, as principal investigator?
This is Denise Devade. I'll move to adopt.
Thank you, Denise. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jessica. Any more discussion on this point before I call for the vote?
So that's a motion to approve the proposed study partner. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Jen, I do actually have a question for you. I mean, David's credentials look, really spectacular. Do you get the sense that there'll be flexibility in terms of pulling in other experts that panel members know and worked with in the past?
Yes. Yeah, I think it's also built into the scope of work that there would be review. I mean, I think community engagement and interviews with and not just interviews as part of the study process, but then I think also determining, what sort of peer review would the panel want to see. I think there's a lot of openness to that, and I think that's a critical part of doing it well.
Great, thank you.
And Jennifer, what would community engagement look like?
Well, I think thankfully with Bagley Keene, I mean, we kind of have it in any meeting we have. And I think maybe, understanding our panel meeting schedule and what's on the agenda and making sure we invite and share that and invite, I think panel members knowing who they'd like to invite for discussions and review of certain materials at certain points in time. Yeah, but I think any other recommendations from the panel on what community engagement, besides hopefully our community engagement with these meetings, will become even more.
Got it. Thank you.
And you can do that kind of stuff on a one-on-one basis, but what Jen just said is excellent, is to get people in to talk to the whole panel.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions or comments before we call for a vote on this item? We got a motion in a second, right? From Denise and Jessica. So roll call vote. Denise, let's start with you.
Sure. Aye.
All right. Maria, are you still on the line?
No, this is her assistant. I'm on the line taking notes for her, Lucy.
Okay, Lucy, thank you.
Welcome.
Then I will go to Ray.
Aye.
Thank you, Ray. Jessica
Aye.
and Tara, I. So 4 ayes.
We have 4 ayes, and Maria, I guess, is that abstained or is that the right
Absent.
word? Absent?
Absent, yes.
Okay. Quorum, so that passes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So the next item up on our agenda is to agree on schedule, locations, and next meeting date. Jillian, I will turn that over to you.
Thank you. Yes. So I toured some places in well, I actually should say we toured one place in Sacramento because there were not many options. But the Cal EPA, other partners and other agencies meetings here. It's centrally located in Sacramento. It's close to the airport. It's close to a lot of lodging, and it's also that we need. So they have, for example, like cameras and microphones, and they see. They actually see the room I'm looking at, which is the Brian Scher Auditorium, seats 250 people. That way we can accommodate the public should they.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
Jillian, I think
sound is
your
going-
audio, yeah. It kind of goes in and out pretty, it might be your headphones. Do you want to try again?
Sure. Can you guys hear me now, or is it still
Yeah.
doing that?
We can hear you now.
Okay. Just let me know if it starts cutting out again. I don't know what that deal is with that. But okay, so I'm recommending the Cal EPA building. It's centrally located in Sacramento. It's near a lot of lodge.
Nope, we
There it
lost
goes
you
again.
again.
I'm not sure if I can fix this. I think it might be an internet connectivity issue.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me right now?
Yes.
Okay, we'll try again. Hopefully this works out. So the Cal EPA building is located in downtown Sacramento. It's pretty centrally located. They've already approved our use of it, should we decide to use them. The Byron Scher Auditorium is the room I'm recommending. It has all the amenities we need, and it seats up to 250 people. Has presentation tools, and it's just kind of like a nice building. So this is this is a room that I'm recommending. Of course, we can find another location if we'd like to. I'm going to move slides so we can look at our meeting times. So this is really what we need to nail down is the times. And if the meeting room doesn't work, I can go back and research and find another place for us to meet.
Jillian, have we confirmed that David Levine can make these times? Or I guess he could join us virtually.
So I was just going to jump in with a recommendation based on these 4 to really maybe focus on either the 18th or August 1st, mainly because the contract won't be executed until the first week of July. And it's unlikely we'd have much for a first agenda until the contract is up and running and staff hiring is allowed, and I think a little bit of progress is started on the design phase. So I may just recommend focusing on August 1st if that's a date that looks good to the group, mainly just to make sure we have progress to start presenting a contract in place, you know, and progress on the design phase.
I know that I will not be in town. I'm traveling on August 1st, so I would not be able to make that date.
Okay, I mean, I can also go back and look for other times past August 1st. I'm just wondering, like, outside of the meeting.
Sorry, Jillian, we didn't get what you just said. Sorry. No. Do you have headphones in? Is it worth trying without headphones?
I don't know if you can hear me, but it's the internet connection. It's not my headphones.
Yeah, okay.
Is it working right now? I'll get it out. Okay. So I was just gonna say that I can look for meeting first. I'm just wondering, is it okay for me to organize that outside of this meeting? That's a question.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's okay to organize dates and locations. The key thing is that everybody gets that minimum of 10 days notice. The other thing I want to emphasize, if there's somebody who really can't come to Sacramento, that you have to give advance notice that we can find an alternative public location for you to attend remotely from wherever you are, Los Angeles or San Francisco or wherever.
Thank you.
I think, you know, I'm going to be in New Zealand on August 1st. So. But I have colleagues that can step in. So.
I think I can speak for Jillian. I think we can reach out to this group over email and identify some dates that work for the majority, hopefully all, for the first, you know, week or two of August, just centering on a couple of options. And we can send that around over email.
That works. Okay, so would we agree then? Could we vote on the location at least at this point? And honor the work that Jillian has done thus far, finding a sufficient meeting location, and then work out the schedule at a different time. Do we have a motion to accept the Byron Shearer Auditorium located at 1001 I Street on the second floor?
What else? I'll jump in here, Tara. It's not something you need to vote on.
Oh, we don't?
No,
okay.
No.
All right.
It's more like, yeah, what works for everybody? You know, that's a challenge with a 5-member panel from all over the state, but that's what you need. You just need to be conscious of that timing. And then you can let, you know, staff pick the location based on the feedback from everybody.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, John.
Mm-hmm.
Then that would take us to agenda item number 8, which is the opportunity for panel members to request agenda items for future panel meetings. Do we have any requests from any of the panel members?
Not at this time.
Okay, then we will move to item number 9, which is public comment. on non-agenda items.
I think the only public we have is the person taking notes for Maria. Maybe she has something to communicate from that Maria was not able to, but yeah.
So who are the folks that we have in the attendee tab then?
These are our colleagues in labor agency.
Okay. I saw one say labor agency, but I didn't recognize all the other names. Okay.
Jay Sturgis is the chief financial officer, and he's the guy watching the budget, as we all need to, because this is part of the state budget.
Awesome. Okay, so no public comment. We get off free today. Okay, then that brings us to item number 10, which means it is time to adjourn. Do I need to move for adjournment, John, or are we
No.
good? Just call it.
Not a legal requirement. So.
Okay. All righty, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.